Hey listeners, thanks for dropping in. I'm Christy.
And I'm Melissa. And this is Buried Motives, where we dig deep into the details of some of the most gruesome
dirtbag murderers.
Hey listeners.
Welcome back to Buried Motives.
We are glad you're joining us this week for Christy's case.
We are super glad that you're here. I'm excited to tell this one because it actually has quite a few similarities to the case that Melissa shared with us last week.
I am always shocked when that happens because we don't know ahead of time, and yet
it happens time after time.
It does. That we're on the same wavelength and picking similar cases with similar themes.
True. Considering how vastly different all of the cases could be.
Right. But because the cases have similar themes, does that mean I'm going to know all the answers today?
No, I don't think so. It's similar, but not exactly the same.
Okay.
And I chose mine for a different reason. For me, I was thinking, how the heck are we already in the second month of 2025? It's February, and that means it's the month of love. The only good thing about it being February, in my opinion, is that it means that we are that much closer to spring. As many of you know, winter is my least favorite season. No surprise there. But since Valentine's Day is just around the corner, I thought that I would bring you a case about love gone wrong. That being said, be sure to tune in next week when we have a very special Valentine's Day treat for you. A little hint is that we are going to be meshing the seasons and love together. Except it will be true crime style, of course.
Be sure to tune in next week for that special episode.
Yeah, we think you'll enjoy it.
We certainly did.
We did. It was a lot of fun. But you have to get through this episode first. To start off, I was thinking that when two people fall in love, typically it starts off with some sort of attraction towards one another. We might feel a spark and get butterflies when around that person whom we are interested in. However, eventually we have to dig a little deeper. Love can't sustainably be skin deep. We fall in and stay in love with someone, hopefully for who they are on the inside, and the pretty packaging becomes a bonus. Today's dirtbag was honestly such a beautiful woman. For as attractive as she was on the outside, it would turn out she would be equally as ugly on the inside. This woman allowed her jealousy to overtake her, and she did the unthinkable. I watched an analysis by Dr. Grande about this case, and he pointed out that sometimes when someone has been in a relationship for a while, they will fight for someone who is exhibiting behavior that they would never have tolerated at the beginning of a relationship. We feel invested in the situation and have a hard time giving it up. We can become hyper-focused on the situation instead of seeing the big picture.
Right. It's escalation of commitment.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree with this sentiment. I think that our judgment gets clouded and we forget in a way that there are plenty of fish in the sea. And that if the slimy trout we're currently finding ourselves with no longer cares about us in the way that they should, or in the way that we want or deserve, we can simply throw them back into the water and cast our rods for a better catch. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. It felt a little preachy, so I had to add that in there.
Soapbox.
Yep. But it's true, we can lose sight of that.
Yes.
And then we're just scrambling, trying to keep someone who we can just let go of and move on.
Mm-hmm.
In short, murder is never the answer. When it comes to a love triangle, you can just simply walk away. This recent case is heartbreaking and so senseless. The lengths that one woman went to try and get rid of the competition, and then what she did afterwards to try and get away with it, are truly shocking. Because this case is so recent, it happened in 2022, a lot of you might have heard about it. I only heard about it just briefly before doing my research. So I learned a lot while preparing for this case. Kaitlin Marie Armstrong was born on November 21st, 1987. She grew up in Livonia, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. Livonia is about 20 miles east of Detroit, and in 2021 had a population of about 95,000. Kaitlin graduated from Stevenson High School in 2005. There's not a lot about her childhood because it was not a horrific childhood that led her to commit murder. In fact, from the outside looking in, she appeared to be the type of girl in high school whom you would think lived a charmed life. As I mentioned, Kaitlin was gorgeous. In her graduating class, she was given the title of Best Hair. She had long, beautiful, thick red hair. She had flawless skin, a fit build, and a really pretty face.
She has red hair.
She has red hair.
And does she have a temper to go with it?
Not typically.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But she commits murder.
She commits murder. But I didn't read that she was known for having a temper.
Okay.
But from the videos that I watched of her, she definitely had an attitude.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm not saying necessarily is a trait of redheads, but it can be. Kaitlin was athletic. She performed really well in volleyball and track and field, and also briefly played basketball. From what I could tell, Kaitlin was popular and likely wasn't used to hearing the word no. There isn't a lot of information about her family. She definitely had a sister named Christine, but I am unsure if she had any other siblings. I don't think that she did. Later on during the investigation, Kaitlin's parents, Sharon and Michael, both expressed their love and concern for their daughter, coming across as loving parents. However, in Kaitlin's later appeals, she claimed that she was a victim of abuse and was raised by an alcoholic mother after her father abandoned them. This came out after her initial trial, so we take that information with a grain of salt. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it seems odd that this information only came out after her conviction in hopes of overturning her sentence.
So it was given as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
After her conviction, not even during her trial. After graduating from high school, Kaitlin attended first the public community college, Schoolcraft College, and then she went to Eastern Michigan University. I'm unsure actually what she went to school for, but at the time of the murder, Kaitlin was working as a yoga instructor as well as a licensed realtor. She was said to excel at both vocations. She was especially good at quote-unquote flipping properties. Kaitlin loved to travel and had the means to do so. She actually earned her yoga certification in Bali, Indonesia. In 2019, when Kaitlin would have been close to age 32, she met the man of her dreams, Colin Strickland, on a dating app. Colin was close to Kaitlin's age. He was tall, dark, and handsome, and to top it off, he was a professional cyclist.
Buns of steel.
Mm-hmm. Thighs that could crush a girl. Have you seen those videos of people crushing watermelons with their thighs?
No.
I'm sure he could have.
You watch the strangest videos. You always say, have you seen that video? I'm like, no.
Yeah, girls and men. I've seen videos where they, like, it's not in a weird sexual way, but they just can actually crush a watermelon with their thighs.
I wonder if I can.
I have thought that. I was like, maybe that's what we need to do next games night. But in the summer when we can do it in the yard.
How hard is that actually?
I would think it's pretty hard.
Oh, I would think so too. But
yeah. Hey, stay tuned, listeners. Maybe one day in the summer we'll try it. I've got pretty strong legs. But we digress. Okay. Colin participated in gravel racing at the top level. Colin was said to be a pioneer in the sport and had won many prestigious races. In fact, if he raced, he typically won. Colin caught the eye of many brands and was sponsored by multiple brands, including Red Bull. Fellow racer and friend of Colin's, Chris Tolley, described Colin by saying, quote, "He was the one to beat. He loved to kind of create a show around bike racing, kind of selling bike racing. He was really passionate about it." Athletic Colin was charismatic and charming and was said to be popular with the ladies. He hadn't really become too serious with a woman until he met Kaitlin. When COVID hit the globe, Kaitlin and Colin decided to move in together. Colin's friend Chris later said that he got along well with Kaitlin. He said that they both came from similar backgrounds, which helped them become even better friends. He confirmed that Kaitlin had a love of traveling and spent a lot of time, quote-unquote, globe hopping. He described Kaitlin as an interesting person. It seemed like Colin and Kaitlin were well suited for one another. They were both lively and athletic people who had zest for life and adventures.
Sounds fabulous.
It started out that way. Once the two started to date, Kaitlin even took up cycling to enjoy with her boyfriend. About this, Chris, Colin's friend, commented that Colin, quote, was very willing to kind of show her, what his passions were and how passionate he was for cycling and, get her involved with it. And she also became kind of addicted to cycling along with Colin. As Kaitlin's skill increased, she started to enter races on an amateur level. Chris said about the couple, quote, "At the end of the day, I feel they had a pretty, normal relationship. They both ride bikes together. They would do fun stuff." The couple became more serious when they decided to purchase a house, as well as start a business together.
Flipping houses?
No, actually. Colin and Kaitlin started a business where they restored classic trailers.
Oh.
Kaitlin took care of the finances and administration part of the business, and Colin did the manual labor and operations part. Things seemed to be going well for the successful couple until 2021 hit. It is unclear why, but the couple hit a rocky patch in their relationship. During this rocky patch, the couple decided to see other people, which led to a brief breakup in October of 2021. During this breakup, Colin became romantically involved with a woman he had become close to in the biking community, another pro racer, a woman equally as beautiful as Kaitlin, named Moriah Wilson, who went by Moriah or Mo. This physical relationship between Colin and Moriah lasted about a week. After this, Colin and Kaitlin reconciled and once again became exclusive.
That seems pretty short-lived.
It was. After their brief tryst, Colin and Moriah stayed friends. Close friends and colleagues.
Friends with benefits?
I think so. But that's debatable for some. Kaitlin was aware of what happened between the two, and it made her feel uncomfortable that they were still a big part of one another's lives.
Yeah, that would be uncomfortable.
It would. And she had found out, they split in October, and she didn't find out about it really until January. And honestly, I think most people would likely feel insecure in this type of situation.
Especially if it wasn't right up front.
Mm-hmm. And you knew that they consistently saw one another.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be logical to question how long your boyfriend had feelings for this other woman if he quickly began a sexual relationship with her once he had the chance, even if it was only for a week.
But how long had they been broken up before they started a sexual relationship?
They were only broken up briefly. I think only a week or two. It was not very long. And so he was sleeping with Moriah.
Right away?
Yes, during that week.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that would make you feel insecure. You finally had the green light and you took it.
Okay.
In my opinion. I can see how she would feel that way anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe he was doing it to get back at her?
I don't think so. I don't think he was using her to be vindictive. They were really close to begin with, had this little opportunity to actually have a sexual relationship, and then still stayed close afterwards.
Okay.
Colin claimed that he and Moriah stayed just friends after their week of romance. And his friend Chris corroborated this by saying that Colin, quote, just wanted to be friends with someone who was going to do great things in cycling. Kaitlin was still an amateur, but Moriah was closer to Colin's skill level. This is where things get a little murky. After the reconciliation and after Colin and Moriah had broken the intimacy barrier between the two of them. Kaitlin did not appreciate that Colin was staying close friends with a woman whom he had slept with while they were on their break. Kaitlin was known for going through Colin's phone on occasion, so clearly she had some insecurities in the relationship.
And that started before he slept with Moriah?
I think so, yep.
Okay.
Colin said that their relationship had been on again, off again the entire time. Does this mean that there had been other women whom he, quote-unquote, dated during their off-again periods? Some sources say that they both dated other people during their breaks. I don't know how true this is. I just know that the short break that they had in 2021 led Colin and Moriah having a sexual relationship and that they stayed very close afterwards.
They were on a break, Christy.
I cannot tell you how many times that went through my mind. And no, she didn't write, what was it, an 18-page letter, front and back, for him to read afterwards. If you know, you know, that quote. If you're old enough to have watched Friends.
That's totally the vibe I'm getting from this, though.
Totally. It's unfortunate if they were on again, off again, that they didn't just break up and go their separate ways. If they had, we wouldn't be talking about them today. Colin knew that Kaitlin was not comfortable with his friendship with Moriah. And so his solution was to just change Moriah's name in his contact list. So if Kaitlin went through his phone, she would not know that he was in contact with Moriah.
How much contact did he have with her?
I think pretty consistent.
Like every day?
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But They didn't stop their friendship afterwards.
What was her new name?
That I couldn't find out. Oh. And he might have even changed it because it said that she went under pseudonyms.
Okay.
Yeah.
More than one.
I think so. And it was also found out later that he would delete some of their text messages. So if it's in a different name and you're having to still delete some of them, how spicy are those messages getting?
Yeah, that seems sketchy.
Mm-hmm. But Colin insisted that he had the, quote, right to have a friendship with this person without having, like, constant strife.
Okay. But then be open about it.
Right. You're still being dishonest because you're hiding it from her.
Right.
You know she's not comfortable with it and you don't care. In my opinion, not that I'm making any excuses for what's about to happen. We can all have our own opinions about this part of the case. Yes, you should be able to have a friend without constant strife. However, if you have to hide that friendship because you know it will hurt your partner, you might want to rethink that.
Or maybe the relationship between you and your partner isn't as strong.
True.
And that's the part that needs to be rethought.
Yes, I think they should have just parted ways, honestly. Despite Colin's attempts at hiding his relationship with Moriah, Kaitlin was aware and her jealousy grew. Kaitlin would call and harass Moriah, telling her that she was the one in a relationship with Colin and to basically stay away from her man. The phone calls became so frequent that Moriah ended up having to block Caitlin's number so that she could no longer contact her. Later in court, a friend of Colin and Caitlin's testified that they had asked Kaitlin what she would ever do if Colin started to date someone else seriously. This witness testified that Kaitlin told them that she would, quote unquote, kill her. And sadly, that is exactly what she did. Even though there is debate on whether or not Colin and Moriah had continued to see one another romantically, for months, Caitlin's jealousy grew to the point that she chose to ruthlessly take Moriah's life.
Oh.
I'm going to jump ahead to the night of the murder, and then we will fill in the missing pieces. In May of 2022, Kaitlin and Colin were living in Austin, Texas. There was a big race, the Gravel Locos, that was going to be taking place in Hyco, Texas, that Moriah was scheduled to compete in. To make it easier to compete, Moriah was staying with a friend named Kaitlin Cash in East Austin. Since her name is also Kaitlin, I will refer to her as just Cash. Just before 10 o'clock p.m. on Wednesday, May 11th, Cash came home after being out with some friends to make the most horrifying discovery of her life. When Cash returned home, she found her friend on the floor, covered in blood. I was able to listen to the 911 call placed by Cash that night, a call that lasted nearly 9 minutes. My heart went out to this woman as she frantically told the 911 dispatcher that she came home and her friend was laying on the floor and that there was blood everywhere. The dispatcher asked if her friend was breathing. There was a pause in the call as Cash goes to check. Moriah was not breathing. The rest of the call mainly consisted of the dispatcher instructing Cash on how to perform CPR on her friend. When police arrived at the scene, Moriah was found bleeding and unconscious. First responders performed CPR, but she was ultimately pronounced dead at the scene. And I think it was like within 15 minutes of their arrival.
Oh, so it was pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Is it different in the States? Is there different parameters? Like I know paramedics here can only pronounce at the scene for very specific things, like very obvious things that mean somebody's dead.
Right. Because typically they would have to pronounce that at the hospital here.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure in Texas, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. I was also able to watch some police body cam video of the scene and police questioning Cash about the situation. Cash was shaking like a leaf, and when you hear someone cry like this, it just hits differently. An experience like this would be beyond awful, and I truly hope that Cash is healing and doing okay. During the interview at her residence, Cash told police that Moriah had been out that evening with a man named Colin Strickland. She said that the two had been out swimming together. This would be the first lead that the authorities needed. And I also read that, I didn't actually put this in here, but they wanted to take Cash to the police station, but she couldn't bear to leave. She was there for like 3 hours afterwards. Before I go more into details of the crime, let me tell you a little bit more about the victim. Anna Moriah Wilson was born on May 18th, 1996. She was murdered just 7 days before her 26th birthday. Moriah was born in Littleton, New Hampshire. Her parents were Karen and Eric Wilson, and she grew up in Kirby alongside her brother Matthew. Moriah attended Burke Mountain Academy and Dartmouth College. Dartmouth, as I'm sure most of you are aware, is a private Ivy League research university in Hanover, New Hampshire. It is a very prestigious school. In 2019, Moriah graduated from Dartmouth with her Bachelor of Arts in Engineering. Along with beauty and smarts, Moriah was extremely gifted athletically. As I mentioned, she was a professional bike racer, but she was also a nationally ranked junior skier. She placed third in the 2013 U.S. Junior National Championship downhill event. According to her obituary, it was also her dream to be a member of the alpine ski team at Dartmouth, a goal she was able to obtain. Moriah was always a biker, but her passion for it grew after graduating from university. After only 2 seasons, she made her way to the top in the nation for both mountain and gravel racing.
Well, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to her athleticism.
Totally, and her drive and determination. Moriah had worked at Specialized as a demand planner after graduating, but had decided just a few weeks before her death to end her job there and focus on her dream of being a full-time professional bike racer. Not only was Moriah absolutely stunning on the outside, she was just as beautiful on the inside. After recently returning to Vermont, she was working towards building a bike community where people could come together socially to, quote, feel welcome, share a good cup of coffee, and a bite of locally sourced food. In her free time, quote, Moriah also enjoyed cooking, writing, traveling. She especially loved Italy, Taco Tuesdays, maple creamies, and playing Catan with her friends.
Catan is a fun game.
We love Catan. We haven't played Catan forever.
Yes. We got the most amazing wooden Catan board from Twisted Grain. It is amazing.
Okay, so when are you inviting me over?
You have to come over this weekend. Let's
do it. Honestly, for sure. I love Catan.
And apparently so did Moriah.
She did. When I read these things about her, I thought, she's my kind of girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she just sounded so well-rounded and so amazing. Moriah came from a good family and it showed. After her death, Moriah's family raised money to help fund community organizations that focused on helping youth find self-confidence, strength, and joy through biking, skiing, and other activities. They also raised funds to help provide training support to ski racers at Burke Mountain Academy and Dartmouth, which was a beautiful way to honor Moriah. There was an autopsy performed on Moriah, which clearly ruled her death as homicide. Moriah had been shot 3 times. She was shot twice in the head and once in the chest, right where her heart was. It is believed that she was first shot in the head, and then after falling onto her back in a supine position, she was shot in the chest, while the dirtbag stood over top of her. This was personal. I was able to watch quite a few videos that had been presented during court proceedings. One of these videos was from a neighbor's surveillance camera. You cannot see anything on this video, but you can hear Moriah's last moments. First, you hear Moriah scream. Next, you hear 2 consecutive gunshot blasts. A few moments later, you can hear the 3rd and final shot, this time without being preceded by a scream. This means that Moriah saw her attacker approach and aim her gun at her. Her final moments had to have been filled with complete and utter terror. After speaking to Cash, police suspected that Mr. Colin Strickland was likely the last person to see Moriah alive. I was able to watch the police body cam of when they approached Colin outside of his home to discuss Moriah's passing with him. Colin was outside, tinkering in the garage, with the garage door opened. Police walked up and greeted him, and after confirming his identity, they asked him if he knew Anna Wilson. Colin at first said he didn't know her, even after they clarified that she went by Mo or Moriah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That's suspicious.
Was. It left a bad taste in your mouth. Because her first given name was Anna, but once they said, no, we're talking about Mo or Moriah, that's maybe how you know her. He still was like, no, I don't know her.
Why would he do that?
I don't know.
Had he already known that she was dead at this point?
No. So there is actual video of him being told this information. After police told Colin that Moriah had been killed, he admitted that he knew her and also told police that he had been with her on the day that she died. So it wasn't until he found out that she had been murdered did he come clean. So I don't know if he was just worried that he was going to get caught. And this is what adds to my suspicion of him and Moriah still carrying on a relationship.
But why would the police care that he was having a relationship with some random person?
Right. But he's at the house that he shares with Kaitlin. She could come out.
Okay.
Just not wanting to admit it, maybe?
It's all a little weird.
It is. I thought it was a very weird reaction for him to deny knowing her at first. I don't know if he was in shock, because even after they tell him that she's passed, it just gets really quiet and they're standing there looking at each other awkwardly. Colin doesn't know what to say. He's not asking questions.
Huh.
Yeah, it was really weird to me. So police would come to learn that on May 11th, Moriah's last day, Colin and Moriah spent part of the day swimming at the Deep Eddy pool. Afterwards, they grabbed a bite to eat together, and I was able to watch video surveillance of them at the outdoor restaurant, eating and enjoying one another's company. It was almost eerie to watch. Neither one of them had any idea that Moriah would be taken from this earth mere hours later. Because they were outside and it was such a lively place and people walking around them and seeing them there, not knowing what was in store for this poor girl.
Yeah, that would be creepy. Was Kaitlin watching them too?
Yeah, she actually was. Colin stated that he dropped Moriah off at her friend's house after they ate. He said he never went inside. Interestingly, Moriah's bike was not initially found inside Cash's residence. During surveillance of the area, police were able to locate Moriah's expensive racing bike discarded in some nearby bushes, which would later be able to be used as evidence against Kaitlin, which we will get into. But I just thought I'd mention that it was found right away. At first, it seems like Colin alluded to police that he and Moriah were just friendly colleagues. But after police searched through Moriah's cell phone, it became clear that the two were probably more than just friends. Colin came clean and explained how he had to delete text messages and changed Moriah's contact information to a false name. Colin also informed the police that he had purchased 2 guns, one for himself and one for his living girlfriend, Kaitlin Armstrong. Police would later get a search warrant for those 2 guns and were able to confiscate them from the home that Colin and Kaitlin owned together. One of the spent shell casings from the Sig Sauer P365 9mm handgun, the gun that belonged to Kaitlin, would later turn out to match one of the shell casings found at the crime scene.
Oh, this sounds like it's all neatly tied up with a bow.
Should have been.
It's not?
Well, there's no shady police work here. Actually, really fantastic police work. But they do experience some hiccups, which we're going to get into. Police knew that they needed to speak to the jealous, scorned girlfriend of Colin Strickland, but it wouldn't be for the first time. I found a video recording of her initial questioning at the Austin Police Department. This interview took place the day after the murder on May 12th. Because her body was found at 10 p.m. May 11th, so it was the next day that they are approaching Colin, getting information from him, and then also initially talking to Kaitlin.
But you said this wouldn't be for the first time?
Yeah, because after they get the warrant for the handgun and that kind of thing, they know they need to talk to her, but that wasn't the first time that they talked to her. They talked to her also initially after.
Okay. Informally, they talked to her before.
Kind of informally. It's kind of crazy what happens.
Okay, so they interviewed her initially like they did Colin.
Yes.
And then they went back and got a warrant to actually question her and get stuff, or?
They got a warrant to seize the guns. Once they realized that Kaitlin's gun is matching the shell casings found at the crime scene, they want to talk to her again.
Okay.
But right now I'm going to tell you about that initial questioning that happened the day after Moriah was found.
And they brought her into the police department, or she came in voluntarily?
No, she actually came in forcefully.
Okay.
Because when police ran Kaitlin's name, they discovered that she already had a warrant out for her arrest.
Oh, for what?
Well, I'll tell you, but this was a perfect excuse to arrest her and bring her in for questioning the first time, soon after they connected her to Moriah via Colin. I watched this entire video, and trust me when I say that it makes you feel a certain way. Kaitlin comes off in such a way that one could feel the urge to throat punch her. I'm not saying I felt that way, but one could. She sits in a very closed-off way, but she has the audacity to act irritated and ticked off that the police had the audacity to arrest her in front of her neighbors, saying that they humiliated her.
Oh dear. I can see what you mean about attitude.
Yeah, definitely. But this is the next day after you've viciously murdered someone, and then you're going to act all inconvenienced because they arrested you.
Does she come off as like a valley girl? Is that wrong to say? That's what I'm picturing. Maybe because you're shaking your head like, they had the audacity to, they humiliated her.
No,
no, not like that.
That's my inner valley girl coming out. No, she like resting bee face comes across that way. Like she's sitting kind of leaned back. She has her arms folded. You can tell she's ticked off that she had handcuffs on because she keeps like rubbing her wrist and looking at her wrist for marks, I think. She's just the type of woman who could go full blown on you, I think, at a store.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. If she wasn't getting what she deserved.
That's a good description.
Yeah, she came across that way to me anyways. Not lively like Stephanie Lazarus from last week's case. Opposite ends of the spectrum. She was not trying to impress anybody.
Okay.
The officer explains that they just want to get some information from her on a totally unrelated matter. She explains to Kaitlin that they are currently speaking to Colin and want her to clear some things up. Kaitlin stays focused on the warrant for her arrest, even after the officer tells her that she has no idea what that is for and that is not her primary reason for wanting to speak to her. The officer makes it sound that they want her to be able to give her side of the story and warns her that if she doesn't, they will only have what Colin says to go off of. And she even tries to make a joke with Kaitlin saying, well, you know how men are with the things that they say. But Kaitlin doesn't bite. Kaitlin doesn't even ask why they are talking to Colin or inquires about what he was saying. She didn't ask because she already knew why. And I think she was trying to avoid the conversation altogether. She asks multiple times if she needs an attorney and keeps coming back to the warrant. And the whole warrant thing is a bit wonky. The officer tells her that she was arrested because of a quote-unquote theft of service warrant, but that she doesn't know the details, only that it is a Class B warrant for a misdemeanor. When I did a little digging, it seems like the warrant was for a Botox service that Kaitlin received but never paid for. The service was administered to Kaitlin in 2018, and the bill was for $650. Allegedly, when Kaitlin went to pay for the service, her credit card was maxed out, and therefore her card was declined. Kaitlin told the employee at Estetica Med Spa in Westlake, Texas, that she would just run out to her car to get another card. Except instead of just running out to her car, Kaitlin completely ran off and never returned to pay her bill. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. She's like, screw that. I'm leaving with my Botox.
Yes. Okay, I shouldn't laugh, but holy cow, does that paint a picture?
Yes. I think it's a fair representation of who Kaitlin was. Or is, I should say. But here's where it gets super wonky. During the interview, another officer knocks on the door. When the interviewing officer comes back, she tells Kaitlin that they accidentally arrested her for the warrant and that it was actually for a different Kaitlin Armstrong. They discovered their error because her birth date didn't match the warrant.
What?
We're not done with this warrant yet, but this is now the new discovery is, wait, we've got the wrong girl.
So she didn't actually do that?
No, she did.
Okay.
But at this point, Kaitlin gets her panties into an even bigger knot when she learns this. The officer explains that she is free to go now since she is no longer under arrest, and Kaitlin expresses wanting to leave. The officer advises her that she won't be able to help her if she does not tell her side of the story. Kaitlin insists coldly that she would like to leave. The officer tells her that they have surveillance footage of Kaitlin's vehicle at the scene of the crime. Kaitlin initially made it sound like she barely knew Moriah, but the officer implies that they know that is not the case. Agitated, Kaitlin continues to ask to leave and then is released. It doesn't take an expert to spot the abundance of red flags during this interview. What stood out to me was how heartless Kaitlin acted. She was stone cold after having just murdered another woman. And so now coming back to the warrant, the crazy thing about it is that it was for Kaitlin, and there was just an error on one of the forms regarding her date of birth. However, this gave Kaitlin a heads up that the police were onto her, so she did what any real dirtbag would do. She fled.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
There was a clerical error.
Yes.
That let her off, and now she's hightailing it out of there.
Right. Because when they recognized the clerical error, likely when they were entering it into the system, they're like, wait a minute, we have the wrong Kaitlin Armstrong. Let her go. And now she knew what they were really wanting to talk to her about.
Right.
She knew right away what this theft of service was. I'm assuming, unless she did this all the time.
There were multiple.
Could have been. I don't know. It didn't sound like it, but...
That's how people afford to look good. They
Right?
just skip out on their bills.
They steal it. Because what are they going to do? Suck the Botox back out of your face? How do they repossess that? They don't. They put out a warrant for your arrest. The police moved quickly to compile as much evidence as they could against Kaitlin. Colin had a solid alibi. I believe he was on a telephone call during the time that the murder took place, making Kaitlin their main suspect. As I mentioned, police did have video surveillance of Caitlin's black Jeep Grand Cherokee, which had a bike rack attached to it, driving past Cash's residence where Moriah would be murdered. When I watched the video, it looks like she scopes out the place first and then parks a little ways away just before the killing. Moriah's bike that I mentioned earlier was found in the bushes close to where Caitlin's vehicle was parked, and Caitlin's DNA was found on the bike's seat and handlebars. This means that after killing Moriah in cold blood, she grabbed her beloved bike and tossed it in the bushes, to me in true temper tantrum rage fashion. Or perhaps she was trying to make it look like Moriah had been killed while someone tried to steal her expensive bike.
Moriah was found in the house.
Yes, Moriah was found in the house.
Yeah. So she was trying to make it look like somebody was trying to steal the bike and they had ridden it away to a certain distance and then trashed it or hit it.
Possibly. But then why would they ditch the bike in the bushes?
Right.
I honestly think she was so angry that when she saw the bike, because Cash said when she would come home, she just left the bike at the entrance of the inside of the apartment. Mm-hmm. So I think she saw it and it just ticked her off that much more and grabbed it just to throw it away.
Being that vindictive.
Right, because it was through biking that Colin and Moriah connected.
Okay.
That's just my speculation.
Because it doesn't sound like there's a lot of forethought going into this.
No.
Definitely not a criminal mastermind.
No, absolutely not. But she is a gutsy one, which we will get into. When people who knew Kaitlin were interviewed, they stated that Kaitlin had expressed wanting to kill Moriah for being with her man. Police also learned that Kaitlin had gone to a shooting range with her sister, Kaitlin Armstrong, to practice shooting her gun. The day after Caitlin's initial questioning, after learning that police had video of her vehicle at the crime scene, Kaitlin went to a CarMax dealership in Austin and sold her black Grand Jeep Cherokee for $12,200, a nice sum to try and make a run for it. And then they turned it around and actually sold it for $30,000.
Yeah, of course.
But she wanted cash. She's like, I just need to get rid of this because she knew it was on the video surveillance.
Right.
She just wanted it out of her possession and cash in her pocket. On May 17th, less than a week after the murder, and the day before what would have been Moriah's birthday, police issued an official warrant for first-degree murder against Kaitlin, but Kaitlin was way ahead of them. I believe it was the day after selling her Jeep, Kaitlin boarded a plane from Austin to New York City. Caitlin's sister lived in upstate New York. Later, from Newark, New Jersey, Kaitlin again boarded a plane and flew to Costa Rica. Caitlin's defense attorney would later try to say that Kaitlin had no reason to believe that she would have a warrant out for her arrest and that she loved to travel, so her going to Costa Rica did not mean that she was guilty and was trying to flee.
It was just a big coincidence.
Yeah. I will also point out that Caitlin's sister told police that she thought Kaitlin was headed back to Austin after visiting her for a couple of days. And I say hogwash.
You think your sister covered for her?
Oh, absolutely. And this is why. I'm not sure the excuse her defense used to try and explain why Kaitlin had her sister's passport to leave first the state and then the country instead of hers, especially since she was such an avid traveler.
Oh.
So I think she went to New York to see her sister. Her sister gave her her passport and then tried to cover for her.
So then she wouldn't be flagged on the fly list.
Right. It took around 6 weeks for authorities to track down Kaitlin in Costa Rica. One of the obstacles that they faced in doing so was that while Kaitlin was in Costa Rica, she had drastically changed her appearance. Not only had Kaitlin cut and colored her hair brown and was using an alias, but she had already had and mostly healed from plastic surgery.
Oh, wow.
Yes, she went to the extreme.
You can get plastic surgery that quickly? Or had she set it up beforehand?
I don't think she had set it up beforehand. I think she had been tipped off by the police that they were onto her, and she panicked and fled to Costa Rica and thought, if I actually change my face, they will have no idea that it's me and just start a whole new life.
I wonder how many people can actually do that and get away with it.
Yeah.
That's quick to have plastic surgery.
She would have had it really close to when she first got there because it was almost healed. And she got a deal.
What?
Well, it does not seem that expensive to me because for $6,000, Kaitlin had lip filler, rhinoplasty, and a brow lift. The receipt for these procedures was later found at the hostel where Kaitlin was staying. The surgeon who performed the surgeries later said that Kaitlin got upset with him when he insisted on taking a before picture of her. I saw photos of Kaitlin after her surgery. It looks natural, and she still looks pretty, but in my opinion, it was a downgrade on her natural looks. It is surprising how much it changed her appearance. It totally changed the shape of her face with the way her brows were changed and the nose job.
Okay, now I have to see before and after. That is interesting.
Yeah. If you just saw her passing.
Yeah, it's almost like they did something to her cheekbones too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
With a nose job, hey?
And an eyebrow lift. And fillers. Following her sister's passport activity, police traced Kaitlin to Costa Rica. It was pretty easy for them to realize that Christine's passport was saying that she had been making these travel arrangements, but she was actually still in New York.
Where they were interviewing her.
Yes. So the police spent weeks searching for Kaitlin at different hostels in Costa Rica.
No, I'm just looking at the pictures.
Isn't it unreal?
Yeah, crazy.
To me, this was like what would happen in a movie. This was wild to me.
I'm shocked that she got in right away. How hard is it to get a medical appointment?
Well, in Costa Rica, probably a lot different than here. Or maybe she knew a guy. I don't know. It didn't sound like she did.
Back alley?
But they did a good job.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a botched surgery. She looks natural. I would not look at her and be like, oh, you have plastic surgery done on your face.
Right. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Finally, U.S. Marshals received a tip that Kaitlin was hiding in a village called Santa Teresa and was using the false name of Beth. And at this point, police don't know that she's undergone plastic surgery while they're looking for her.
Right, so how do they even find her using her picture?
Oh, I'm going to tell you. It's pretty wild. But had she not used her sister's passport, she probably would have got away with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because you would not have had any way to connect her.
No.
But like I said, the police work was really good in this case. Instead of just searching for Kaitlin amongst all of the tourists and risking her figuring it out, authorities decided to cleverly set a trap for her. They did this by posting a fake job opportunity for a yoga instructor. They hoped that the lure of a job would flush her out. And it worked. Kaitlin took the bait.
Oh, that is smart.
Isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The arresting officer said that when he saw her, he was unsure if it was her. But ultimately, he said it was her eyes that gave her away, and he just knew that it was her. So if they had just gone looking for her, they would not have found her. Because she didn't look like her.
Mm-hmm.
Kaitlin showed up to the interview using the name Ari. When asked about the bandage on her nose, she said she had been hit by a surfboard, because there was still just a tiny bandage left. During the conversation, Kaitlin made it sound like she was in Costa Rica for the long haul and was trying to establish roots there. No roots were established. Instead, Kaitlin Armstrong was arrested in Costa Rica on June 29th, 2022. She was sent to a jail in Costa Rica until she was able to be extradited to the United States. Once in the States, Kaitlin was charged with first-degree murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, and her bail was set at $3.5 million. Thankfully, she was not able to make bail and remained behind bars until her trial. While awaiting trial, on the morning of October 11th, 2023, Kaitlin needed to be transferred out of the Travis County Corrections Facility to a medical appointment. At 8:17 a.m., as Kaitlin was leaving her medical appointment, she decided to make a run for it. This woman is wild.
Where was she running to?
She almost got away.
No way.
Honestly. I actually saw pictures of her running, and it's almost like a cartoon. She's just full on sprinting. It's crazy.
And she thought she was going to get away.
She almost did. She actually injured an officer during the process.
Oh my goodness.
With her hands still in cuffs, Kaitlin somehow managed to get away from the officers and took off running. She tried to jump a 6-foot fence. She managed to wiggle one of her wrists out of the cuffs and then even removed her prison pants while fleeing. She was prepared by having thermal pants underneath her prison uniform. I think she really thought that she was going to get away with it, and she got rid of the prison pants immediately so she wouldn't be as easy to spot. Shockingly, when she tried to scale the fence, an officer was able to grab her and pull her down, injuring himself in the process. But Kaitlin managed to break free from this officer and began running again. She was able to get away from him.
This is crazy.
The full pursuit lasted about 10 full minutes. Kaitlin had been training physically for months for her escape attempt. Plus, she had faked a leg injury leading up to her appointment so that she wouldn't have to wear leg restraints.
How did she get out of her handcuffs?
I don't know. She managed to slip one of her hands out.
Wonder if she was complaining about them being too tight or something.
Maybe. She'd gotten into a tizzy the first time she had to wear handcuffs.
Right. And if she had this kind of complainer attitude,
she could have insisted on them making them a little bit looser.
Right.
And she had convinced them not to put leg restraints on her because she had an injury. So maybe she was so much of a hassle that it was easier just not to do it than to deal with her and the grief that she would produce over it.
Right. That's crazy.
But thankfully they did catch her, but she did almost get away. It almost worked.
Did she have any help that time?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Now back in custody, Kaitlin's trial began on November 1st, 2023. She now had an added charge of escape causing bodily injury. She pleaded not guilty to all charges.
Of course she did.
The truth about May 11th, 2022 would come out during the trial, even though Kaitlin still denies killing Moriah. That afternoon, Moriah arrived at Cash's house in preparation for the race that she was considered a front runner to win. That same afternoon, via text message, Colin and Moriah made arrangements to meet up with one another. Colin texted Moriah when he was leaving his house that he shared with Kaitlin to go and pick Moriah up. I am unsure if Kaitlin saw this text exchange or if her spidey senses were just tingling. But regardless, about 5 minutes after her boyfriend made arrangements to meet up with another woman, the woman whom she was viciously jealous over, Kaitlin used the Strava fitness app, which uses a GPS feature, to look up Moriah's location.
So is that one where your friends are connected and that's how she could see it?
Yes, so it was a fitness app that Colin was friends with Moriah on. So Kaitlin was able to track Moriah because Colin followed her on an iPad that he shared with Kaitlin. And I believe this is also how she tracked their messages. Colin arrived at Cash's place to pick up Moriah. They went to the deep eddy pool and enjoyed a swim together under the nice warm sun. Next, the pair enjoyed one another's company further while enjoying drinks and food at the Pool Burger Cafe. After their quote-unquote date, Colin dropped Moriah back off at Cash's place just after 8:30 p.m. Cash had an electronic lock which recorded Moriah entering the residence at 8:36 p.m. At 8:37 p.m., 1 minute later, Kaitlin's black Jeep Grand Cherokee was seen on Cash's street. Cash returned home at 9:45 that same night and found her friend laying on the bathroom floor covered in blood.
It was quick.
She had to have been following them.
Yeah.
So I think she was watching them at the pool, watching them at the restaurant, enjoying one another, having a little date, and as soon as he dropped her off, she struck and was gone. It was all said and done before Cash got home at 9:45.
That is so quick.
Yeah, it's just over 1 hour. Colin testified against his girlfriend just 2 days into the trial. I don't feel like Colin has been completely honest about his relationships. I think he was stringing along both women. He would say that he didn't see a future with Kaitlin, but he lived with her and purchased a house together, started a business with her. On the other hand, around the time of the murder, Moriah had sent text messages to Colin that would suggest that even she was confused about their relationship status. Colin said that they were mostly just friends, but Moriah had sent him text messages that read, quote, "This weekend was strange for me. If you just want to be friends, that's cool. Honestly, my mind has been going in circles." So she was even unsure. On the other hand, we know he was lying to Kaitlin. On the day of the murder, he had told Kaitlin that he was just going to go run some errands, and then told her that his phone had died. This was false. He spent the day with Moriah, and I assume turned off his phone thinking that he couldn't be tracked that way.
And then he lied to police about knowing Moriah.
Yes, when he had just been with her the day before. And Moriah's friends knew who Colin was. Cash had told police right at the scene of the crime that she had spent the day with Colin Strickland.
So it wasn't a big secret.
No.
Yeah, that doesn't all add up.
No, I don't think he had anything to do with it, but he was a dirtbag, in my opinion. It is believed, because of additional surveillance footage, that Kaitlin was likely using the GPS tracker on Moriah to spy on them throughout their date, likely growing in anger throughout the entire thing. This would also explain how she showed up on Cash's street just 1 minute after Colin dropped Moriah off for the evening.
Do you think that Colin's actions of stringing both women along led to Kaitlin getting even more angry? Or do you think she still would have reached that level had he just been upfront with her and be like, yeah, I don't want to be with you anymore. I want to be with Moriah?
I don't think it would have reached this level. I think he was stringing her along. I think because he says, oh, we were just on again, off again. It wasn't who I wanted to settle down with. But your actions, buddy, are not saying that. Mm-hmm. You're living with her. You purchase a home. You're
starting a business.
Yeah. And then you're telling her, no, we're just friends. And you're hiding all of your interaction with her. Mm-hmm. So I think it just fueled this jealousy in Kaitlin, where if he had just broken it off for good, I think she would have went her separate way.
It is curious that both of our cases back to back have been with men that haven't been honest with either one of the women that they've been with.
Yes.
Well, it's the women who actually made the decision to kill too, but...
Oh, definitely. But he gets to just continue on with his life. And the two women that he was stringing along, one is now murdered, and the other one has ruined her own life too.
Yeah. It is interesting.
Yep. I was thinking that the whole time when I was listening to yours last week. Interestingly, Kaitlin's phone was also not connected to a cell network on the day of the murder. It is believed that she turned her phone off or put it on airplane mode so that she couldn't be traced. About this, Detective Jonathan Riley said, quote, and I really liked this, "In this day and age, if your phone is off and not connected to a network, you're either the victim of a crime or you're probably committing one."
That's so true.
It is. I really like that. Yeah, touche. The defense tried to argue that there was no evidence directly linking Kaitlin to the crime, but there was definitely enough. Just over 2 weeks after the trial started, on November 16th, 2023, after less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found Kaitlin Armstrong guilty of first-degree murder. She was just days shy of her 36th birthday at the time of her sentencing.
I wonder if she's irked because she was a younger woman, too.
Probably. And she was just that much better.
Yep.
She was a pro racer. Kaitlin was just getting into it and obviously was very competitive because she had been an athlete too. And she went to a more prestigious school. She had higher status and perceived achievements than Kaitlin and was just as beautiful. So she didn't even have that over her. Texas was not messing around and Kaitlin received her sentencing the very next day. Any guesses for how long?
20 years?
90 years.
90?
Yes, I was surprised.
Wow.
Plus a $10,000 fine. But unfortunately, she will have the chance at parole after 30 years. But she did get a 90-year sentence. During her sentencing hearing, loved ones of Moriah's were given the opportunity to give statements and address the dirtbag who took Moriah from them. Kaitlin Cash was able to speak directly to Kaitlin Armstrong. In part, she said, quote, "So many people in this room have lost so much. I'm angry at you, at the utter tragic nature, at the senselessness, at not being able to hear Mo's voice again. I feel deep sadness for the road ahead." Moriah's mother also spoke. She said, quote, "I hate what you did to my beautiful daughter. It was very selfish and cowardly, that violent act on May 11th. It was cowardly because you never chose to face her woman to woman in a civil conversation. She would have listened. She was an amazing listener. She would have cared about your feelings.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. Karen also said, quote, "You killed her earthly body, but her spirit is so very much alive, and you can never change that. When you shot Moriah in the head, you shot me in the heart. You shot Eric and Matt in their hearts." Kaitlin was sentenced to serve out her time in a Central Texas prison where she currently resides. That being said, she is unsurprisingly not going down without a fight. Appeals have already been made. One of Kaitlin's appeals claims that she was pregnant at the time of her arrest. This tidbit of information was not announced during the first trial. However, her defense is claiming that she was pregnant for the second time, and if this mitigating evidence was brought forward, she likely would have been given a lighter sentence. Then why didn't you bring that forward?
Where's the baby?
I will note that there's nothing in the court filings to confirm that Kaitlin was even pregnant at the time, or if Colin was the father if she was. So I assume either she lost the baby or she is lying. I think it's a tactic, but I don't know for sure. Understandably, this entire ordeal had been extremely hard on Moriah's family. In May of 2024, 2 years after Moriah's death, her parents filed a civil wrongful death suit against Kaitlin. The suit was to include the cost of Moriah's funeral and burial, along with emotional damage. This suit also included that Kaitlin should be prohibited from profiting in any way for the murder, including any movie or book deals. And I believe there's already been a movie made on this case.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That was quick.
It is quick. Thankfully, the Wilsons won the civil suit. On June 17th, 2024, Kaitlin was ordered to pay Moriah's family $15 million.
She get the money from?
We're still going to talk about money.
Okay.
Moriah's family actually sued Kaitlin a second time. I am unsure about all of the details of this suit, but I do know that it has something to do with 3 properties that Kaitlin owned or partially owned. Because remember, she was a realtor. From my understanding, these properties should have been sold to pay towards what she owes the Wilson family. Instead, for sure 2 of these properties were transferred to Kaitlin's mother or sister. The 3rd property, Kaitlin co-owned with Colin, and it sounds like she gave the property in full to him. This is a massive dirtbag move. She was in real estate, and instead of paying Moriah's family, she quote-unquote gave away her assets. Kaitlin also had a bank account with $78,000 in it at the time of Moriah's parents filing their initial civil suit against her. 3 days after the filing, the account was drained to just $10.
Oh, she hid all of her money.
Uh-huh. But I felt like it was kind of shady, too, of her family to just take the properties. I am unsure of the outcome of this civil suit or if it has been resolved, because this is still so new. What I am sure of is how clearly and deeply Moriah was loved. Cash has spoken about how she will never forget what happened and how she is living with PTSD. She has said, quote, "I cannot tell you how many times I've relived that night, trying to figure out if there was something different I could do to protect her." Cash had picked up Moriah from the airport, and they had ran to one another in slow motion before hugging. The next day, Cash said that she texted Moriah's mother a picture of Moriah and told her, quote, "Your girl is in safe hands here in Austin." Cash recalls that the night she found her friend, she could hardly bear to leave her side, even after she knew she was dead. She also said about washing Moriah's blood from her hands after trying to help her, quote, "I'll never forget that moment in the bathroom, watching that sink turn red and wanting to put it back on my hands because it was the only thing I had left of her." This is heartbreaking. There was no way anyone could have known what was going to happen.
That is so sad.
I never really thought of that, the cleanup afterwards. Moriah's brother Matthew has said about his sister, quote, "My sister was my closest confidant, my only sibling, the only person in the world I could talk to about certain experiences." He continued to say, quote, "My sister had her life taken from her for no reason at all. She'll never ride a bike again. She'll never take a 20-minute break from work to bake banana bread in the kitchen. She'll never get married." Karen, Moriah's mother, has told how Moriah was born during a lightning storm, how she lived life to the fullest and died alone on a cold bathroom floor. She wishes that she could have stood in the way of those fatal bullets. This horrific murder did not happen that long ago, and the heartache that it caused must still be so raw. Moriah was described as such an honest, caring, inspiring, and hardworking woman who I am sure is deeply missed every single day. I learned that there has been a trail built in Kingdom's Trails in northern Vermont to honor Moriah. It is called Moriah's Ascent. If I ever make it to that area, I will be sure to visit the trail, and I truly wish only love and healing towards her loved ones. Kaitlin seems unremorseful and is still trying to wiggle her way out of her consequences. I believe she already has another appeal in motion, filed in September of 2024, trying to get a retrial, so let's hope that she is never successful. I was not able to find any updates on Kaitlin's family, but at the time of her manhunt in Costa Rica, they did appear on Good Morning America and expressed their love for their daughter and told her to come home so that they could figure this out because they knew she could never do what she was being accused of. And that is the story of a woman who couldn't see past her own passion and jealousy, an entitled snake who thought a man was worth killing for, the conniving dirtbag, Kaitlin Armstrong.
She was so self-centered.
She really was. That's what I mean. I think she lived this charmed life and was not used to hearing no, and then could not take it when she was being replaced.
Yeah, could not move past it.
No. And going back to that video that I said I watched with Dr. Grande, I think she was in that state, that escalation of commitment where at the beginning, I don't think she would have put up with a guy like that.
Well, she didn't even need him. She was so successful. She could have found another man easily. She didn't need his money or anything like that.
No. And she had a lot going for her. She could have probably gone into a bar anywhere and picked out who she wanted.
Yeah.
And it's always, not that I think that they should attack the man, but it's always so interesting to me that they attack the other woman, the threat.
Yeah.
Because they just can't see it for what it is. That I could just break up with him. You don't have to kill him. You can break up with him and move on.
It's so sad because there were so many other choices that she could have made.
A million other choices.
Yeah. As our friend Kim would say.
Yes. And we're not done with these stories of love gone wrong because, like we said before, we have a very special Valentine's Day episode for you coming next week. So we really hope you'll join us for that.
Until then.
See ya.
Bye.
Testing.
What am I going to say for testing today?
That you love me.
I'm interested to hear your case because you said it was similar to mine. So now I'll know all the answers.
Did you notice how she didn't say she loved me? What am I going to say? That you love me. I'm just interested in hearing your case, girl. I'm only here for the snack pantry, actually.
Yeah. That's right.
Ouch. I'm like the teacher on Charlie Brown.
Yes.
Wah, wah, wah.
That's
wah,
exactly
wah,
what
wah.
it sounded like in my brain. And I was like, what?
He loved to kind of create a show around bike. He loved to kind of create a show around bike. Okay.
Julien McQuell. Thank you, Julien.
Thank you.
Julien McQuell.
The third member of our podcast. For realsies. More chocolate. She's actually so beautiful, but maybe with the help of Botox, I could be too.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.